while you're still young. You'll find your heart and find your song. No matter where you're going and no matter where you've been, I never needed anybody else's call now. All right, hello. How is everyone? I'm doing really well. I just got back from Iceland like a couple days ago. Grown out my little mustache. It's kind of laughable, but I'm enjoying it. I feel like from a different era with a mustache. Like I feel like I'm from like the 50s or something, or like the 60s. I don't know. I got a huge coffee today too. How are you guys? How is everyone? Italian look. Yeah, exactly. You know, it's interesting. In Iceland and in London, I got more comments that my name was Italian than ever. Like, most people were like, "Ah, Alberto, where are you from?" And I'm like, "I'm from Florida." And they're like, "Ah, Alberto, it's an Italian name." I'm like, it is. So, yeah, Stella, whenever you guys come on, Stella magically wants to go outside. I don't get it. Good after Comic-Con. Awesome. Comic-Con was great. I loved being in London and London Comic-Con. I don't know about you guys. I thought it was awesome. I hope everyone that came had a great time. Okay, so the reason I was a few minutes late today is because I was coming back from Barnes & Noble. I made a couple of executive decisions about the books we will be reading. The way I see it, we'll talk about the rest. ¿Por qué tienes que saltar de ahí, Estela? So, the name of the song at the beginning was Still Young by the Cat Empire. Diego showed them to me, and actually Jade is a big fan as well, so I would check it out. So, next books. Yes, if you want to get some coffee, I say, because we have a lot to talk about. Sorry, I'm getting off topic. Okay. All right, so instead of our originally planned Count of Monte Cristo, we're going to move the Count of Monte Cristo back. Okay? We're going to read it. Yeah, Stella speaks Spanish. She's bilingual. As much as she pretends she doesn't, she does. She knows she's in trouble when she gets talked to in Spanish. So, we are going to push this book back till right before the summer. Remember how we always like to do a book over the summer? And this year we were supposed to do it with Handmaid's Tale, but then we all read it together instead. We're actually going to do a summer book, and the summer book is going to be the Count of Monte Cristo. And because I'm nice, we're going to make it the abridged version. If you bought the unabridged version, read it. It's incredible. I have the abridged version, so I'm going to read this one. But we'll make that our summer book, and we'll do one live about the whole book and different parts, and maybe it'll be like a 2-hour live. But that's what we're going to do. So everyone, Count of Monte Cristo is being pushed back. Now, I'm going to give us the weekend, and we'll start reading these books Monday. Well, this next book. I had talked to a couple of you during... Oh, the first part's incredible. If you already started it, keep reading it. Go ahead, read it. Just know we're going to talk about it after next summer. But, so this next one is a short book, very important. I've read half of it, and then I put it down, and then I couldn't find it, so I stopped reading it. Then I found it, and I'm glad we're going to bring it back. So, the next book we're going to be reading is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist. So I'm just going to read the back for you. Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl's memoir has riveted generations of readers with its descriptions of life in Nazi death camps and its lessons for spiritual survival. Based on his own experience and the stories of his patients, Frankl argues that we cannot avoid suffering, but we can choose how to cope with it, find meaning in it, and move forward. At the heart of his theory, known as logotherapy, is a conviction that the primary human drive is not pleasure, but the pursuit of what we find meaningful. Man's Search for Meaning has become one of the most influential books in America. It continues to inspire us all to find significance in the very act of living. I think that's a really cool book to pick up right after finishing Things Fall Apart, and I'm very excited about it. So, the next book that we will start reading Monday. So today's Thursday. You have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You have till Monday to find out. I know I mentioned to Rita, Rosende Reads PDFs, that we're probably going to be reading it. I don't know where she is on finding the PDFs, but if anyone finds them, I bet it would help everyone out if you tweet them to me. If you find PDFs in different languages, tweet them, and I will do that. So yes, we'll get to Things Fall Apart in a few minutes. I just wanted to finish this really quickly so we don't have to do it at the end, so we have more time to talk about Things Fall Apart. So Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Then, to finish the year off, this was a recommendation by our very own Rita, Rosende Reads PDFs. So, the next book that I think we're going to end the year on, it's a longer one, but we're going to finish it before the new year. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. Every bit of research I did this year had this book on their list. Everything I was looking for, this book was there. So, we're going to read this book. Also, there's a movie that just came out. I was actually at a screening of At Eternity's Gate last night, which is the one about Vincent van Gogh, played by Willem Dafoe. And they were doing a screening of The Hate You Give, so I was like, okay, perfect, we're going to read this. So the first book we will read we will start next Monday, after Things Fall Apart, is Man's Search for Meaning. Then we will read The Hate You Give. Then we will start our year with Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. I've seen the movie. If you haven't, it's a fantastic movie. If you haven't, I would wait. Let's read the book together. I think it's a really interesting way to start the year, Into the Wild. The main character asks a lot of questions and really challenges society in his own way. I'm not saying we all have to go live in a bus in the middle of Alaska, but I'm saying I think there's a lot of really cool ideas in here that I think would be really fun to start. And if you've seen the movie, then you know how great it is. Now, guess what? There's still 2 more books. Then in February, or whenever we finish Into the Wild, we're going to start one of my favorite writers, Toni Morrison. We're going to start Song of Solomon. So Song of Solomon is about Milkman Dead was born shortly after a neighborhood eccentric hurled himself off a rooftop in a vain attempt at flight. For the rest of his life, he too will be trying to fly. With this brilliantly imagined novel, Nobel Prize laureate Toni Morrison audaciously transfigures the coming-of-age story. As she follows Milkman from his Rust Belt city to the place of his family's origins, Morrison introduces an entire cast of strivers, seers, liars, and assassins, the inhabitants of a fully realized black world. I love Toni Morrison. I read Beloved in high school, and it became one of my favorite books. So I'm excited to read this. And then, after that, in March, The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. This book was said to inspire Crazy Rich Asians. I like how it deals with kind of familiar relationships, and that's why I chose it. So, we have the next 5 books. So I'll read them one more time, and then we will start. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. We will start reading this on Monday. To end our year, we will read The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. To start our year, 2019, Into the Wild, Jon Krakauer. To continue with amazing literature, we will read the awesome Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon. And to close it out so far, Amy Tan's The Joy Luck Club. After that, I will have more. I like to say that Viktor Frankl is more of a biography because it's about his personal experience and his writings. So we're reading in a biography now. We're going into a bunch of different genres here. And then we might pick a play. I don't know. But, so those are our 5 books. I will be posting about them soon. If you have any questions, please let me know. Tweet us. Tweet me. Tweet other book club members. Yeah, so check it out. It's going to be cool. one thing about having a mustache, it's really fun to go like this. I love the Joy Book Club, and the movie's just amazing. I haven't seen the movie. Made me read books I'd never thought I'd touch. That's the whole point of this book club, is to read books that we never thought we would read, or to expand what we think about reading. I would tell you, I would have never thought to read a few of these, and I'm glad we are. Which play? I don't know. I would want to pick one that I know well enough, but not too well, because I'd want to explore it with you guys. So, we will now... Give me one sec. I just need to take a coffee break. So now, we will talk about Things Fall Apart. I'm reading biographies. I'm thinking of finding another biography to read after that. Also, I want to say congratulations to anyone who voted a couple days ago on Tuesday. Voting is the best exercise of your voice that you can do as a citizen of a democracy, as a citizen of the world. It is making an active choice in the world that you want to see. Anyone that voted, I don't care who you voted for, I'm proud that you voted. I'm proud that you used your voice, and I'm proud that you stood up and said, I want to say something, I want to change the world. That's the most important part. And that conversation that comes after is what we do as citizens. We decide, all right, this is where we are now as a country. How do we move forward? How do we make the world a better place for everyone? Very exciting. So everyone that voted, congrats. If you couldn't vote, vote next time. If you're not of age yet, or if you are and didn't vote, why didn't you? But yes, I just have to say that. I voted for the first time at my polling place here in LA. It was very fun. It was a really cool thing. So let's start. I'm going to put all these down. Let's start. Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. I want to start this live very kind of wild. What are your first thoughts? How did you feel about the ending of the book? The end of Things Fall Apart, I nearly keeled over in shock. Jordana, same thing. For me, it was one of those things that when I read, I was like, why are there no more pages? Why did the book end? I like the description of different cultures. Obama's first biography is pretty interesting. You know, it's funny that you say that. I have it on my desk. I was thinking about it. I can't find it right now. Okay, off topic. Sorry. We might put that one in there, but okay. In cultures, I was shocked at the ending. Generally, I liked the book, but the ending disappointed me a bit. I felt it was resolved so quickly and easily when it could have taken a lot further. Triforce of Dragons, I'm actually going to talk about that. I really didn't enjoy this book. Also, I think I couldn't really understand it without reading the next two books, maybe. Maybe. I challenge you to do that. I know I'm going to, because I actually love this novel. Didn't like the ending. The end of this book was a lot better than the start, in my opinion. It still wasn't my favorite. Very unexpected. Didn't like the ending at all. Also, I posted that post about the notes. I told you that our PDF... Okay, cool. Thank you, Rita. Also, too many names I can't pronounce. Yes. I like how they explain and how they see white man coming into their culture. I guess it ended like that because there are other books in the series, but it makes people want to read the rest if they want. Yes. The book is interesting. We can see different points of culture. So at this point, in my research, I like to look at the Spark Notes analysis. I like to look at some essays that come up about the book. I like to look at a few things, especially for the last live of each book, because I want to see where we are and what I was thinking about it. I found a couple of things that I want to read. I want to talk about everyone's talking about the ending. There's so many beautiful quotes. Yes, Mara Barclay. I'm going to read this one paragraph that was taken from the analysis I found, I believe, on... oh my goodness, what is it called? Spark Notes. I believe in Spark Notes. I think it's a great thing, but I think it's a great thing when you do it in tandem with your reading. Don't do it instead of. People do that. It's not good that way. It's great when you read and then you look at analysis and you can say, oh, I don't know if I fully agree that, or I see that, or now that is revealed to me. Cool. So I'm from a country, the African culture is huge, so I found this book fascinating. Awesome. Noye impressed me when he walks around the church. Yes. But I like how this book is way out of my comfort zone, and then I learned things in different culture from it. Awesome. The title definitely fits. Everything just falls apart for the main character. Exactly. I'm going to read this paragraph. Bear with me, guys. It's a little long. The novel's ending is dark and ironic. The district commissioner is a pompous little man who thinks that he understands indigenous African cultures. Achebe uses the commissioner, who seems a character straight out of Heart of Darkness, another novel, to demonstrate the inaccuracy of accounts of Africa, such as Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. The commissioner's misinterpretations and the degree to which they are based upon his own shortcomings are evident. He comments, for example, on the villagers' love of superfluous words, attempting to ridicule their beautiful and expressive language. His rumination that Okonkwo's story could make for a good paragraph illustrates that shallowness. Whereas Achebe has written an entire book about Okonkwo, he suggests that a European account of Okonkwo would only likely portray him as a grunting, cultureless savage who inexplicably and senselessly kills a messenger. Achebe also highlights one of the reasons that early ethnographic reports were often offensively inaccurate. When Obirika asks the commissioner to help him with Okonkwo's body, the narrator tells us that the resolute administrator in the commissioner gave way to the student of primitive customs. The same people who control the natives relay the accepted accounts of colonized cultures in a manner, of course, that best suits the colonizer's interests. So what he's saying is, like, with the whole ending of Okonkwo's story highlighted by the way that the commissioner responded to it, his shallow understanding, and said, wow, that'd be a great chapter in a book, he felt that this is a commentary on what often comes from colonial accounts of Africa, and that they can't understand the true complexity. And then you see he even mentions language there. I have a thing about language I want to say. Language as a sign of cultural difference. Language is an important theme in Things Fall Apart on several levels. In demonstrating the imaginative, often formal language of the Igbo, Achebe emphasizes that Africa is not the silent or incomprehensible continent that books such as Heart of Darkness made it out to be. Rather, by peppering the novel with Igbo words, Achebe shows that the Igbo language is too complex for direct translation into English. Similarly, Igbo culture cannot be understood within the framework of European colonialist values. Achebe also points out that Africa has many different languages. The villagers of Umofia, for example, make fun of Mr. Brown's translator because his language is slightly different from their own. On a macroscopic level, it is extremely significant that Achebe chose to write Things Fall Apart in English. He clearly intended it to be read by the West at least as much, if not more, than by his fellow Nigerians. His goal was to critique and amend the portrait of Africa that was painted by so many writers of the colonial period. Doing so required the use of English, the language of those colonial writers. Through his inclusion of proverbs, folk tales, and songs translated from the Igbo language, Achebe managed to capture and convey the rhythms, structures, cadences, and beauty of their language. The language barrier between the colonists and the villagers enables a crucial misunderstanding to take place. Unawareness of this interpreter's attempt to appease the villagers, Smith considers burning the church an open show of disrespect for the church and his authority. The power that the interpreter holds highlights the weakness and vulnerability created by the language gap, reinforcing Mr. Brown's belief that reading and writing are essential skills for the villagers if they hope to maintain their authority. This miscommunication reminds us of the parrot's trickiness in Akwefi's story about Tortoise. So what we're seeing is language. I did not realize how much, we talked about it in the beginning, but language played such a big role. And then after reading these analyses, I was like, holy crap, there was so much depth to what we've read. Still super sad about Ikemefuna. I can't pronounce his name, I apologize if it's wrong, but I agree. Angelic Lewis, yes, we read Lord of the Flies last year. So when we see what happened to Okonkwo, when we see what he did to himself, there's this whole theme of the part of the community that since his exile, Okonkwo no longer sees himself as. He was exiled to his mother's people, which he saw as weak, which I think goes in line with his thought of masculinity. And then when he comes back, he doesn't see himself as part of the people. He wants to show that he's one of the better people. He wants to prove that he was a warrior. But the whole tribe has changed. You can't observe the culture. You have to embed yourself in it to get a sense of both sides. Love that. I feel like the whole paragraph made me understand it better, right? Well, language is a part of culture. It's the main vehicle of culture. Both parties weren't able to understand each other because they couldn't communicate. So that is a theme I want us to take into our greater world and think about communication, how well we're doing it, how poorly we can be doing it in certain places, and where communication is vitally important. Language is the most important part of culture. Never thought he'd actually kill himself. He was such a masculine leader who thought nonviolence was so cowardice, and to kill himself just so how far he was pushed. He was pushed on the opposite end. He became almost a martyr for his cause. He was someone that, I mean, think about it. That morning when they were deciding what are we going to do about, the burning of the church and them holding all of us captive, what are we going to do? He didn't exchange hellos with people of the community as everyone else did. He sat stood silent, wondering about his own fate. And when he killed, his rage is something they talked about throughout the book. And then there was that amazing chapter where he kind of confronts this burning fire in him and he realizes that a burning flame, although hot, only leaves ashes behind. It's true in this day and age, most people just assume and judge instead of taking the time to communicate and truly understand someone. Of course, there are many other ways to communicate, hand gestures, but fun thing is that similar hand gestures have different meanings in different cultures. Exactly. He felt like an outcast. He felt alone. And then now we have to look at what happens to a group of people or a person such as Okonkwo when they feel ostracized by not only a foreign community but by their own. In this way, we can try to understand what's kind of going on in parts of the world. We can try to discover a better way to communicate and challenge and grow with people. I think that's like a fascinating one part. Okonkwo was never taught to adapt. He was taught to be strong and to be a leader. And I think those are some things that eventually broke him. I think the best leaders know how to adapt and grow through that adaptation. They can understand that. And I think this is where we see where he was kind of limited because of his beliefs. But at the same time, I think any one of us that has a really strong and rich culture, if we were to see the degradation of that culture through time and then come back when it was part of who what we used to truly identify ourselves and who we are and our relationship to the world, I can only imagine what Okonkwo was going through. This complete loss of everything that he could grab onto. And even when he wanted to use violence, the one thing that always went out for him, it destroyed everything. And it separated him from his community. It separated him from the people that were trying to oppress them, to the point where I think he felt there was only one way out. The main character saw that giving in and embracing the foreign culture, he would lose his honor and himself. It kind of reminded me of all the Indian history I learned about in school, with the British invading and taking over here as well. Colonialism, it's a common thing that this one culture comes in and tries to oppress the other culture for terms of power and use, education. It's very interesting. Tishwalker, I don't know why, in my opinion, leaders are leaders because they know how to adapt so they can be the best version of themselves. The exile broke him. His reputation was smudged, and it was everything to him. He lived through his title and his name. When it was completely destroyed, he felt like he had nothing left. And that's I felt so bad for Okonkwo. I see him. To me, I was reminded, I didn't wear a hat today because I thought my hair looked good. I was reminded of, has anyone seen Fiddler on the Roof? Well, one of the first songs we see in Fiddler on the Roof is tradition, right? That idea of that's what bonds these people. That's what makes them who they are the traditions they continue. And then we see what happens to Tevye at the end of not the end of the first act, in the second act, when his daughter, not Seitel, Hoddle, when his daughter Hoddle wants to marry the Christian man. His culture, who he is so grounded in his Judaism and his belief that at that point, his back would break. He has to say no. So I think Okonkwo is in a very similar place. All of his ideas about who he is that are so defined in his culture, his tradition, and what he has grown up and taught himself it means to be a person are completely challenged to a point where he could break or bend. And he's not a man that would ever bend. He's scared about the changes, and that's something we have to acknowledge when we look at the greater political scheme of our life. When people are afraid, what are they willing to do? How are they willing to protect themselves? And how are we willing, and how do we reach them? You know, it's a bunch of... That's why I've been picking these books, because a lot of them have messages in here that I want us all to take in and understand, and I need to further understand myself. And I will say this is one of my favorite books that I've read. I really loved it, because I understand this tie to tradition and who you are because of it. I like to think that he killed himself to save the village from the retaliation, but he did it because he was ashamed of his people because they wouldn't fight. I also think there was some part of Okonkwo that was a bit of a martyr. He was the one person willing to stand on the old ideas of Umofia that wasn't there through the change. He wasn't there for the beginning. He only saw what was already too deep for him to catch, too far for him to stop. So in a way, he was willing to die for those old principles rather than change. Perhaps the last man. And that's why for me, I was so upset when I read this one part. Oberika, I said Oberika when I pronounced it, but Oberika, who had been gazing steadily at his friend's dangling body, turned suddenly to the district commissioner and said ferociously, "That man was one of the greatest men in Umofia. You drove him to kill himself, and now he will be buried like a dog." He could not say any more. His voice trembled and choked his words. That part was so powerful for me, because they all saw what he did. He disgraced himself through their culture, but he stood up for their culture in a way that they couldn't or didn't. I found it quite sad that he was ostracized from his people when alive, and then again in death. When they refused to touch his body. It was the foreign men he hated so much who had to bury him. Is it also symbolic of them burying the culture? With Okonkwo, the last warrior, the last fighter, the one who's willing to die and end himself for that cause, that now the foreign people who were slowly burying their religion and culture now bury the last post of it? How do we survive of something changing? That's a good question. I want to read a book about that. Same. All that has happened in this book is so powerful. I love it. Same. He couldn't handle the fear. I don't think he was ever scared, and he didn't know how to handle that feeling. Interesting, right? Especially when it was in a way that he couldn't fight it. He couldn't fight it. His people was the most important thing. Enough to sacrifice himself, didn't even think twice. The part was so sad. My head was a mess trying to pronounce these tongue twisters. Yeah. Oh my God, I jumped. You scared me. Sorry. Sad and powerful. Abstract, very severe culture shock, I guess. I think it was like jumping into I was jumping from cold water into lava. We should read more books with different settings and cultures so we can learn from them. I plan for us to do that. Oh, what the Huck and Polar? Awesome. I'm glad you liked it again. Can someone find out who quoted this? I judge a person not by what they read, but by what they reread. I think that one's cool. I love the little tales the mothers tell to the kids. Well, I know there's there's that idea that we continue the cycles that our parents have given us. And the little bit that we grow is great. And I feel like Okonkwo had this cycle that he started where he wanted to be everything different from his father, which only led to that cycle happening again with his son. It was almost a perfect parallel that his son didn't want anything to do with it. What do I think about Nwoye turning against his culture? It can't be easy. But then again, when that culture doesn't accept you. Because remember, Nwoye wasn't the best son. He wasn't super strong. Okonkwo constantly talks about how he was effeminate and wasn't a real warrior or man. So I think it's only natural that he pushed him away just as much as Nwoye didn't. There's something to that. Do you enjoy your mustache? Yes, I do. I found very interesting the fact that the book takes the name from a poem by William Butler Yeats called The Second Coming. Let's look at that. I haven't read it. How long is it? Okay, I'm going to read it out loud for everyone. Is that cool? I'm going to read the poem, The Second Coming. So, The Second Coming by William Butler Yeats.
Gyre.
Okay. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack of all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of the spirit's mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man. A gaze blank and pitiless as the sun is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again. But now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hours come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born? Interesting. Reread, put a different Okay, rereading helped you. Cool. You know, I think Nwoye would be very sad because of, I mean, think about everything that Umofia meant to him. Everything that he held close. I mean, I know if maybe he doesn't understand it himself, but I think he knows what that meant. And for him to do that, he probably knew how broken his father really was, which would upset him. Remember, Noye did denounce him. But I still have to believe that that would have really hurt Noye. Damn it. Okay. I think Noye felt kind of all stressed too because how his father treated him. Totally did. I reread books all the time. Let me enjoy it all over again. It brings back happy memories. Exactly. I think Noye would be upset too. I think he'd be very hurt. And also, they never made up. Noye had his father leave him in a very brutal way without ever getting that we're okay. So I feel as though that would have been very hard for Noye. He'd also feel guilty, maybe, because he knows that was... Yeah, absolutely. Also, I feel so bad. He didn't see his daughters get married. He didn't build his compound again. He was barely there before... I don't know. To me, reading this book and seeing the pitfalls that have happened to Okonkwo not help me understand... Maybe they do, a bit of the people holding on to different traditions and cultures in my country. They're voting, things like that. And what is scaring them, what's holding them back is fear more than anything. What's holding anyone back is fear. Emotional Alberto. Yeah, this book was incredible. Really was. I think... maybe we can put the second and third book on like the next couple years. Like next year we can put the second book so we can talk about it in the third year. I think that'd be a cool idea. Fear is a powerful tool. Yes, I have. I was on the list today. I almost bought The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. But they didn't. It was sold out. So that's probably going to be on the list if you guys want to get that one. But I don't know if the other books carry on. Let's look that up. So the African trilogy, Things Fall Apart, No Longer at Ease, An Arrow of God. Let me look up No Longer at Ease. You know what's weird? Remember when Amazon used to just be for books? It used to just be like an online Barnes & Noble? I'm going to buy this book too. I'm probably going to read it soon. Okay. When Obi Okonkwo, the grandson of Okonkwo, the main character of Things Fall Apart, returns to Nigeria from England in the 1950s, his foreign education separates him from his African roots. No longer at ease, what? That's the third one? What's the second one then? Arrow of God. So let's go back to that and do this. So we know the third one is Okonkwo's grandson. When Things Fall Apart ends, colonial rule has been introduced to Umofia, and the character of the nation, its values, freedoms, political foundations have substantially and irrevocably been altered. Arrow of God, the second novel, moves the historical narrative forward. This time, the action revolves around Ezulu, the headstrong chief priest of the god Ulu, which is worshipped by the 6 villages of Umaro. The novel is a meditation on the nature, uses, and responsibility of power and leadership. That sounds pretty good. Yeah, Amazon used to just sell books. I remember when I was a kid, oh, buy it on Amazon. Now it has everything, but... I think we'll do that. We'll do one a year. So for the next 2 years, you know that we're going to be writing one of these. All right, we have about 13 minutes left. Let's do quotes for the next few minutes, and then we can do other stuff. Oh, God, more memes. Quotes. Give me some quotes, guys. What quotes do we got? Actually, if I may, I'm going to... Oh, man. No, I don't want to... I have a couple of quotes from... I have a couple of quotes from the movie I saw last night that were just... He saw himself and his fathers crowding around their ancestral shrine, waiting in vain for worship and sacrifice, and finding nothing but ashes of bygone days. I'm looking them up right now. Okonkwo was popularly called the Roaring Flame. As he looked into the log fire, he recalled the name. He was a flaming fire. How then could he have begotten a son like Nwoye, degenerate and effeminate? Perhaps he was not his son. No, he could not be. His wife had played him false. He would teach her. But Nwoye resembled his grandfather Unoka, who was Okonkwo's father. He pushed the thought of his mind. He, Okonkwo, was called a flaming fire. How could he have begotten a woman for a son? The white man was very clever. He came quietly and peaceably with his religion. We were amused. And yet we say, Yeka Mother is supreme. Why is that? There was silence. I want Okonkwo to answer me, said Uchendu. I do not know the answer, Okonkwo replied. The crime was of 2 kinds, male and female. Okonkwo has committed the female because it has been inadvertent. We are better than animals because we have kinsmen. An animal rubs its itching flank against a tree. A man asks his kinsman to scratch him. I love that. As the elder said, if one finger brought oil, it soiled the others. There is no story that it was not true. Yeah, I love when I get your quotes because I'm looking at the ones that I'm looking up. This one I wasn't good at like writing things down. I literally just read it. Ah, there we go. Thank you, Morgan. Tell me what you read, and I'll tell you who you are is true enough. But I'd know you better off. You told me what you reread. The world has no end, and what is good among people is an abomination to others. Such good quotes! This book was great. I loved this book. Okay. A proud heart can survive a general failure because such failure does not prick its pride. It is more difficult and more bitter when a man fails alone. Yeah, see, Rita, this is one of those books that I did the same. I just literally kept reading until the end. I didn't really take notes. I was just so involved in this story. I was like, I think it's cool that we have books where we feel that we can take notes and write things down and stuff, and we have other books that we just have to read. I don't think it's a fault to anyone. All right, so we have a few minutes. So let's say goodbye to Things Fall Apart. That's another book down. Congratulations, guys. How many books is that? How many books have we read now? We read 13? That's pretty badass. I'm pretty proud of that. So I'm going to put it on the stack of books that I've read. And now we will talk about our next book, Man's Search for Meaning. I'm going to read the back for it so that we all kind of know what's coming up. All right? Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl's memoir has riveted generations of readers with its descriptions of life in Nazi death camps and its lessons for spiritual survival. Based on his own experience and the stories of his patients, Frankl argues that we cannot avoid suffering, but we can choose how to cope with it, find meaning in it, and move forward. This book is a book about Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who actually goes and is taken to one of the death camps in the Holocaust. It's a powerful book. If you are nervous about reading it, aren't sure, I would do a little bit of research. Ask your parents, but it's a very good book, littered with beautiful things about life and stories, but it is heavy, so I want you to know that it is a heavy book. Well, he's a psychiatrist that was in this, so he decided to use this to analyze people and their behavior, which I think was a really cool idea. It is an inspiring book. Yeah, it's been over a year since starting the book club. Isn't that really badass? All right, I'm gonna go see Dom later today. I've got a cool day planned. Cool day. It's going to be a very spiritual, motivational book. And then the book after that, so you guys can buy these two, or find these two right away, is The Hate You Give. 16-year-old Star Carter moves between two worlds, the poor black neighborhood where she lives and the fancy suburban prep school she attends. The uneasy balance between these worlds is shattered when Star witnesses the fatal shooting of her childhood best friend, Khalil, at the hands of a police officer. Khalil was unarmed. Soon afterward, Khalil's death is a national headline. Some are calling him a thug, maybe even a drug dealer and a gangbanger. Star's best friend at school suggests he may have had it coming. When it becomes clear the police have little interest in investigating the incident, protesters take to the streets and Star's neighborhood becomes a war zone. What everyone wants to know is, what really went down that night? And the only person alive who can answer that is Star. But what Star does or does not say could destroy her community. It could also endanger her life. Angie Thomas's searing debut about an ordinary girl in extraordinary circumstances addresses issues of racism and police violence with intelligence, heart, and unflinching honesty. So those are the two books we're going to be reading. They cool ways to kind of end this year off and then start the year with Into the Wild. So I will be posting about those. Do your best to get the books. Please tweet me. Tweet me the PDFs. Oh, that's cool. Yes, I'm always trying to get books that are going to be interesting. I'm not going to pick books that are boring because then I don't want to read them. I'm not saying there are boring books, but there are boring books. Books that, at least to me, aren't as enjoyable. So I'm always going to try to pick books that are enjoyable. Yes, so if you guys can send me the PDFs on Twitter, I will retweet them to Rosende Reads PDFs. Or if you want to send them straight to Rosende Reads, that works too. Rosende Reads PDFs on Twitter. I'm not going to link them on Instagram, but I will put the names of our other books in a story tomorrow on Insta so we can all look. Thank you guys for doing another book. Thank you guys for reading. I want you to look at the role that fear plays in your life and the lives of those around you for this next week while we're kind of waiting to start our next book. Just let that sink in, what people are afraid of, what you're afraid of, and then what you actually, what your behavior is because of that fear. I think analyzing that for yourself is a very important thing. But have a great day. Have a great week. Remember to continue being positive forces of change in your environment. Continue questioning. Continue being curious. Continue searching. Continue exploring. And being that positive change in your environment. Thank you guys so much. I will see you next week. So we will start reading the book on Monday. The live will be next Sunday. Not this Sunday. You have this weekend free. The following Sunday. I will see you guys later. Have a good one.